In suburban Minneapolis, a 26-year-old EMT was about to discover the ultimate family betrayal. What started as returning home from a grueling shift took a shocking turn when they found an empty driveway. Alex Rivera wasn't your typical pushover. For years, they'd sacrificed everything for family, known for their unwavering reliability. When they learned their parents sold their car to fund their sister's vacation, they had no idea this betrayal would unlock devastating power. Alex's discovery that their name was on the family mortgage would lead to nuclear consequences. What began as theft would become calculated revenge. The Rivera family would never recover. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Alex Rivera's hands trembled as they fumbled with keys, 48 hours of non-stop EMT calls, leaving them running on caffeine and determination. The Minneapolis autumn air cut through their fatigue as they approached the family home's driveway, muscle memory guiding them toward their usual parking spot beside their father's weathered pickup truck. The empty space stopped them cold. Alex blinked hard, wondering if exhaustion was playing tricks on them. Their reliable Honda Civic, bought used 3 years ago, with the small dent and radio that only worked on AM, was gone. Not stolen, surely. Maybe their parents had moved it, though that seemed unlikely given how carefully Alex always parked. Probably just moved it, Alex muttered, but a cold knot formed in their stomach. They knew their parents. Miguel would never touch someone else's car without asking, and Carmen was too anxious to drive anything but her own vehicle. Alex walked toward the house, stopping when they heard familiar laughter from the backyard. Family dinner. They'd forgotten. Sunday dinners were sacred in the Rivera household, Carmen's attempt to maintain traditional bonds despite growing tensions. Alex's absence would have been noted, worried over, ultimately excused because of work. They were always given passes for work, one of the few areas where dedication was acknowledged, rather than simply expected. Walking to the backyard, Alex found the familiar scene, Carmen bustling between the outdoor table and kitchen, graying hair in its usual neat bun, while Miguel sat reading his phone, weathered construction worker's hands wrapped around a beer bottle. Bella lounged in her favorite chair, dark hair catching evening light as she scrolled through her phone with practiced ease. "Alex!" Carmen's face lit up. "Mijo, you made it. I was worried you wouldn't get here in time." "Traffic was light," Alex replied, accepting their mother's embrace while scanning the driveway. "Mom, where's my car?" The question hung in the air. Alex watched a subtle shift occur. Carmen's smile became fixed. Miguel looked up from his phone, meeting Carmen's eyes in one of their silent conversations. "Oh, that?" Bella said without looking up. "Dad sold it yesterday. The buyer came with cash and everything. It was so random, they just knocked on the door." Alex felt the world tilt, the way it did during intense emergency calls when reality became surreal. "Sold it?" "Sit down, Mijo," Carmen said quickly, voice taking on the soothing tone she used when sensing conflict. "Let me fix you a plate. I don't want food." Alex's voice carried sharpness that made everyone look up. Even Bella lifted her eyes from her phone. "I want to know why my car was sold without anyone talking to me." Miguel cleared his throat, the sound he made before delivering uncomfortable news. "It was just sitting there, Alex. You barely drive it anyway with all the overtime. And we needed the money." "For what?" Alex asked, suspecting they already knew. Bella's face brightened with excitement that made Alex's chest tighten. "For my Italy trip." "Oh my God, Alex, you're going to be so jealous." "The Amalfi Coast, Rome, Florence. I've been planning this for months. It's going to be incredible content for my Instagram. I might even monetize it." The words hit like a physical blow. Alex stared at their sister, searching for any sign she understood the magnitude of what she'd said. But Bella's expression remained bright, eyes already returning to her phone screen showing Italian coastlines. "The car payments," Alex said slowly. "I'm still making payments on that car." "That's the beauty of it," Miguel said, as if delivering good news. "The buyer paid enough to cover what you owed, plus extra for Bella's trip. It worked out perfectly." Alex stared at their father, processing the casual way he'd announced selling property that wasn't his, making financial decisions involving Alex's credit without a phone call. The exhaustion transformed into something sharper, more dangerous. "You had no right," Alex said, voice gaining strength. "That car was in my name. I was making the payments." Carmen moved closer, hands reaching out in the placating gesture Alex had seen countless times whenever family tensions threatened to boil over. "Mijo, please understand. We wouldn't have done this if we had any other choice. But Bella's been planning this trip for so long, and you know how important it is for her career." "Her career?" Alex's laugh held no humor. "Taking selfies at tourist attractions?" "Don't be cruel," Carmen said, voice sharpening with protective instinct. "Bella is building something. She has thousands of followers. This trip could launch her platform." Alex studied their family members. Miguel avoided eye contact, hunching his shoulders. Carmen showed guilt mixed with defiance, someone who knew they'd crossed a line but felt justified. Bella looked genuinely confused, as if she couldn't understand why anyone would be upset. "I work 60-hour weeks," Alex said slowly, voice taking on the controlled tone they used with difficult patience. "I've been supporting this family financially since I was 19. I paid for my own EMT training. I help with the mortgage, utilities, groceries. I co-signed on this house when you were facing foreclosure 3 years ago." "And we're grateful?" Carmen began. "Are you?" Alex interrupted. "Because it looks like my contributions are expected, while Bella's dreams get funded by selling my property without consent." Bella looked up from her phone, genuinely confused. "I don't understand why you're so upset. It's just a car, Alex. You have a good job." The casual dismissal was the final straw. Alex stood abruptly, their chair scraping against concrete. "Just a car," Alex repeated hollowly. "A car I'm still legally responsible for. A car I need for work. A car that was mine." Miguel finally showed signs of understanding they'd made a mistake. "Look, Mijo, maybe we can help you get another car." "With what money? The money you just spent on Bella's vacation?" "This is temporary," Carmen said desperately. "Family comes first, Alex. We support each other." Alex stared at their mother, seeing clearly how the family dynamics actually worked. Family came first, only when it meant Alex sacrificing for everyone else. "I need to be alone," Alex said. They moved through the sliding door, past the familiar kitchen smells, up to their childhood bedroom. Behind them, Carmen's voice probably made excuses to Bella about Alex being oversensitive. Alex sat on the bed they'd slept in since age 12. In this house they'd helped save from foreclosure, the house where their name was on mortgage documents alongside their parents. The irony wasn't lost on them. Their phone buzzed. Jordan texting, "Hope your family dinner is going better than expected." Alex stared at the message, realizing they had no idea how to explain this. "How did you tell someone your family sold your car without permission?" Exhaustion crept back, but underneath it, something else grew. Something cold and calculating Alex had never felt before. As they sat in gathering darkness, their mind wandered to legal documents, mortgage papers, the financial entanglements binding this family together beyond blood and obligation. They'd always been the responsible one, counted on to sacrifice for the greater good. But listening to the conversation below, Bella's excited chatter, and Carmen's reassurances that Alex will understand, Alex realized their role had been built on a fundamental misunderstanding. They'd thought they were investing in relationships, building mutual support and love. But they'd actually been enabling a system that saw them as a resource to exploit rather than a person to cherish. For the first time in their adult life, Alex wondered what might happen if that resource decided to withdraw support entirely. The house felt different, as if the foundation had shifted. Because as Alex sat in darkness, their mind calculated what they owned, what they controlled, what power they'd overlooked, while focused on being the perfect, self-sacrificing child. The car was gone, but there were other things, bigger things, that their parents had forgotten Alex had legal rights to. Alex stared at the ceiling, sleep impossible despite bone-deep exhaustion. Every time they closed their eyes, fragments of memories surfaced, like pieces of a puzzle they'd never wanted to complete. The mortgage papers, Carmen's tears when the foreclosure notice arrived, Miguel's broken expression as he'd admitted his construction business was failing. "We need your help, Mijo," Carmen had whispered 3 years ago, her voice thick with shame. Just your signature. Just until we get back on our feet. Alex had been 23 then, barely established in their EMT career, but they'd signed without hesitation. Family came first. That had always been the Rivera way. They'd co-signed the mortgage modification, legally binding themselves to a debt that would follow them for decades. At the time, it had felt noble, heroic even. Now it felt like the moment they'd signed their own exploitation contract. A soft knock interrupted their brooding. Alex sat up as Jordan's familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway, their partner's concerned face illuminated by hallway light. "Your mom let me in," Jordan said quietly, stepping into the room. "She said you weren't feeling well." Alex almost laughed at the understatement. That's one way to put it. Jordan settled beside them on the narrow bed, their presence both comforting and complicated. "How did you explain this level of family dysfunction to someone whose parents had healthy boundaries, who'd grown up in a household where love wasn't conditional on financial sacrifice?" "Talk to me," Jordan said simply. The words came out in fragments at first, then in a rush. Alex told Jordan about the car, about Bella's casual dismissal, about their parents' expectation that Alex would simply understand and move on. As they spoke, Jordan's expression shifted from confusion to concern to something approaching anger. "They sold your car without permission?" Jordan's voice carried the disbelief of someone processing an impossible scenario. "Alex, that's theft." "Technically, it's complicated," Alex said, though even as they spoke, they realized how automatically they were making excuses. "The registration was at their address and—" "Stop." Jordan's voice was firm but gentle. "You're doing it again, making excuses for them." Alex fell silent, recognizing the truth in Jordan's words. How many times had they explained away their family's behavior, rationalized their treatment, convinced themselves that this was just how families worked? "Tell me about the mortgage," Jordan said. "You mentioned co-signing." Alex's chest tightened as they remembered that desperate winter 3 years ago. Miguel's business had been failing since a major client defaulted, leaving him with unpaid invoices and outstanding loans. Carmen had stopped eating regularly, stress manifesting in her rapidly thinning frame. Bella had been oblivious, complaining about the house being too cold, while their parents struggled to pay heating bills. "I was working double shifts, sending them money for groceries," Alex said. But it wasn't enough. The bank was going to foreclose. They remembered the family meeting, if it could be called that. Carmen crying, Miguel staring at his hands, Bella scrolling through her phone, apparently uninterested in the crisis threatening their home. Alex had felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on their shoulders, the expectation that they would fix this, that they would find a way. "The mortgage company said they'd modify the loan if we had a co-signer with steady income," Alex continued. "Someone who could guarantee the payments if my parents defaulted." "And you volunteered," Jordan said, understanding dawning in their voice. "I didn't volunteer. I was asked." The distinction felt important somehow. Carmen said it was temporary, just until Dad's business recovered. She promised they'd refinance in my name off the loan as soon as possible. "Have they tried to refinance?" Alex's silence was answer enough. The business hadn't recovered. If anything, Miguel's financial situation had grown worse. But refinancing would require admitting the modification hadn't worked, would mean confronting the reality that Alex was now permanently tied to their family's financial stability. "I own 1/3 of this house," Alex said quietly. "Legally speaking, my name is on the deed alongside theirs." Jordan was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. Do they know that? I don't think they really understand it, or maybe they've forgotten. Alex stood and walked to the window, looking down at the backyard where their family had finished dinner without them. "They see me as the responsible one who'll always be there, always sacrifice, always understand." "But you're not understanding this time, are you?" Alex turned to face Jordan, seeing their own transformation reflected in their partner's eyes. "No, I'm not." "Good," Jordan said firmly. "Because this isn't normal, Alex. Healthy families don't work this way." The words hit harder than Alex expected. They'd always known their family was different from Jordan's. The Kims had boundaries, open communication, mutual respect. But Alex had convinced themselves that the Rivera way was equally valid, just more traditional, more about sacrifice and loyalty. Maybe we should consider family therapy? Jordan suggested gently. There are people who specialize in these kinds of dynamics. You think therapy can fix this? Alex gestured toward the window. Can make them see me as a person instead of a resource? Jordan was quiet, seeming to sense that Alex was approaching a line they'd never crossed before. What are you thinking about doing? The question hung in the air between them. Alex could feel themselves standing at a crossroads, one path leading toward attempted healing and reconciliation, the other toward something darker and more final. I'm thinking about what it would mean to stop enabling them, Alex said carefully. To use the power I actually have instead of pretending I don't have it. What power? Alex met Jordan's eyes, seeing their own reflection there. Tired, hurt, but for the first time in years, calculating. I co-signed that mortgage, Jordan. My name is on the deed. If I wanted to force a sale of this house, I probably could. The words left them feeling both terrified and exhilarated. They'd never even considered using their legal position as leverage before. It had always seemed unthinkable, a betrayal of everything family was supposed to mean. But as they looked down at the patio, where Bella was probably still chattering about Italian hotels while their parents nodded indulgently, Alex wondered if maybe it was time to stop protecting a family that had never learned to protect them. Alex, Jordan said quietly, be careful. Revenge has a way of destroying the person seeking it as much as the target. Alex nodded, but their mind was already elsewhere, calculating possibilities they'd never allowed themselves to consider. The car was gone, sold to fund Bella's dreams while Alex's needs were dismissed as unimportant. But the house, their house, legally speaking, was still here. And maybe it was time their family learned what happened when you took the responsible one for granted one too many times. Marcus's hand tightened on his coffee cup as he studied Alex's face across the break room table. The EMT station buzzed with its usual activity, radios crackling, engines starting, the constant background noise of emergency services. But Marcus's attention was fixed entirely on his best friend's transformation. They sold your car, Marcus repeated slowly, as if saying it again might make it make sense. Without asking. To fund Bella's vacation. To Italy, Alex confirmed, stirring sugar into coffee they didn't want. For her Instagram career. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from disbelief to something darker. Jesus, Alex. That's not family dysfunction. That's financial abuse. The words hit harder than Alex expected. Financial abuse. They'd heard the term in training, recognized it in the domestic violence calls they responded to, but applying it to their own family felt like crossing a forbidden line. It's not that simple, Alex began. Stop. Marcus's voice carried the authority of someone who'd walked this path before. Don't make excuses for them. I spent 3 years doing that with my parents before I finally woke up. Alex had heard fragments of Marcus's story over the year. Parents who'd maxed out credit cards in his name, who'd convinced him to take out student loans they'd spent on their failing restaurant, who'd made him feel guilty for wanting basic financial boundaries. Marcus had cut contact completely 2 years ago. They took $40,000 from me, Marcus continued, his voice steady but his eyes hard. Convinced me it was a loan, that they'd pay me back once the restaurant turned around. When I finally demanded repayment, suddenly I was selfish, ungrateful, abandoning family in their time of need. Alex stared into their coffee, seeing their own reflection in the dark surface. But they're still my parents. So were mine. That doesn't give them the right to exploit you. Marcus leaned forward. How much have you given them over the years? Really given them, not loaned, given. The question forced Alex to calculate, and the numbers were staggering. Monthly contributions to groceries and utilities, the down payment for Miguel's truck when his old one died, Carmen's medical bills when she'd avoided going to the doctor for months because they couldn't afford it, the mortgage co-signing that had legally entangled Alex with their financial irresponsibility. Probably $60,000, Alex admitted quietly. Maybe more. And what has Bella contributed? She helps around the house sometimes. What has she contributed financially? Alex's silence was answer enough. Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling through something before turning the screen toward Alex. It was Bella's Instagram. Glossy photos of designer coffee, expensive skincare products, the kind of casual luxury that came from never worrying about money because someone else always handled the bills. "This is what your sacrifice bought," Marcus said. "Your sister's lifestyle while you work 60-hour weeks and co-sign mortgages." Before Alex could respond, the break room door opened and Carmen appeared, her face showing the strange smile she wore when venturing into Alex's work environment. She clutched her purse tightly, dressed in her best blouse, the one she wore to church and important occasions. "Mijo," she said, her voice carrying forced cheerfulness. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I brought you lunch." Marcus stood immediately, gathering his things. "I'll give you privacy," he said, but his eyes met Alex's with a look that said, "Remember what we talked about." Carmen waited until Marcus left before settling into his chair, placing a container of homemade tamales on the table. "You look tired, Mijo. You're working too hard." "I'm fine, Mom. About yesterday." Carmen's voice trailed off, her fingers fidgeting with her purse strap. "I know you were upset, but I need you to understand our position. Miguel's business hasn't recovered since the Henderson project fell through. We're barely keeping up with bills." Alex recognized the familiar pattern. The setup, the explanation of financial hardship, the implicit request for understanding and continued support. "Then maybe Bella shouldn't be going to Italy," Alex said quietly. Carmen's face tightened. "Mijo, you don't understand. This trip isn't just vacation. It's an investment in her future. She has real potential, real opportunities. But she needs this chance to prove herself. With my car. It was just sitting there most of the time, and we made sure the payments were covered. I didn't consent to the sale, Mom. The car was in my name." Carmen leaned forward, her voice taking on the pleading tone Alex knew so well. "We're family, Alex. Families help each other. Everything I've done, everything your father has done, has been for you and Bella. We sacrificed our dreams so you could have opportunities." The guilt manipulation was so automatic, so practiced, that Alex almost felt themselves yielding to it. "Almost. What dreams did you sacrifice for me?" Alex asked. Carmen blinked, apparently not expecting the question. "My nursing career. I gave it up to support your father's business, to be there for you children. You chose to give up nursing to support Dad's business. That was your decision about your marriage, not a sacrifice for me." "How can you say that?" Carmen's voice rose slightly, drawing glances from passing EMTs. "Everything we did was for our children's future." "No," Alex said, feeling something crystallize inside them. "Everything you did was to maintain a system where Bella gets whatever she wants and I pay for it." Carmen's face crumpled slightly. "You don't mean that. You're just hurt about the car, but you'll understand once you've had time to think." "I've had plenty of time to think." Alex stood, the movement decisive. "And I've realized something important." "What's that, Mijo?" Alex met their mother's eyes, seeing for perhaps the first time not the loving parent they'd always believed in, but a woman who'd learned to use guilt and manipulation to avoid facing hard truths about her family's dynamics. "I've realized that I have options I've never considered before," Alex said quietly. "Legal options." Carmen's face went very still. "What do you mean?" "I mean that when I co-signed that mortgage, I became a legal owner of the house, and legal owners have rights." The color drained from Carmen's face as the implications hit her. "Alex, you wouldn't." "Wouldn't what? Protect my own interests for once? Stop enabling a system that treats me like a resource instead of a person?" Carmen stood abruptly, her purse clutched to her chest like armor. "I don't know what Marcus has been filling your head with, but this isn't you talking. This is anger, and it's gonna pass." "Maybe it is anger," Alex agreed, "but maybe it's also clarity." Carmen backed toward the door, her eyes wide with something Alex had never seen before: fear, not of physical harm, but of losing control over the dynamic that had sustained their family for years. "Don't do anything you'll regret, Mijo," she said quietly. "Family is forever. Everything else is temporary." After she left, Alex sat alone with the untouched tamales, their mother's words echoing in their mind. Family is forever. But as they thought about Marcus's story, about the legal documents that gave them power they'd never exercised, Alex wondered if maybe some family bonds were worth breaking. Their phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How did it go?" Alex stared at the screen, then typed back, "I think it's time to explore those legal options we talked about." The response came immediately. "I know a real estate lawyer. Want me to set up a meeting?" Alex's finger hovered over the keyboard for a long moment before typing, "Yes." Alex stared at the ceiling, sleep impossible despite bone-deep exhaustion. Every time they closed their eyes, fragments of memories surfaced, like pieces of a puzzle they'd never wanted to complete. The mortgage papers. Carmen's tears when the foreclosure notice arrived. Miguel's broken expression as he'd admitted his construction business was failing. "We need your help, Mijo," Carmen had whispered 3 years ago, her voice thick with shame. "Just your signature. Just until we get back on our feet." Alex had been 23 then, barely established in their EMT career, but they'd signed without hesitation. Family came first. That had always been the Rivera way. They'd co-signed the mortgage modification, legally binding themselves to a debt that would follow them for decades. At the time, it had felt noble, heroic even. Now it felt like the moment they'd signed their own exploitation contract. A soft knock interrupted their brooding. Alex sat up as Jordan's familiar silhouette appeared in the doorway, their partner's concerned face illuminated by hallway light. "Your mom let me in," Jordan said quietly, stepping into the room. "She said you weren't feeling well." Alex almost laughed at the understatement. "That's one way to put it." Jordan settled beside them on the narrow bed, their presence both comforting and complicated. "How did you explain this level of family dysfunction to someone whose parents had healthy boundaries, who'd grown up in a household where love wasn't conditional on financial sacrifice?" "Talk to me," Jordan said simply. The words came out in fragments at first, then in a rush. Alex told Jordan about the car, about Bella's casual dismissal, about their parents' expectation that Alex would simply understand and move on. As they spoke, Jordan's expression shifted from confusion to concern to something approaching anger. "They sold your car without permission?" Jordan's voice carried the disbelief of someone processing an impossible scenario. "Alex, that's theft." "Technically it's complicated," Alex said, though even as they spoke, they realized how automatically they were making excuses. The registration was at their address, and— "Stop." Jordan's voice was firm but gentle. "You're doing it again, making excuses for them." Alex fell silent, recognizing the truth in Jordan's words. How many times had they explained away their family's behavior, rationalized their treatment, convinced themselves that this was just how families worked? "Tell me about the mortgage," Jordan said. "You mentioned co-signing." Alex's chest tightened as they remembered that desperate winter 3 years ago. Miguel's business had been failing since a major client defaulted, leaving him with unpaid invoices and outstanding loans. Carmen had stopped eating regularly, stress manifesting in her rapidly thinning frame. Bella had been oblivious, complaining about the house being too cold while their parents struggled to pay heating bills. "I was working double shifts, sending them money for groceries," Alex said, but it wasn't enough. The bank was going to foreclose. They remembered the family meeting, if it could be called that. Carmen crying, Miguel staring at his hands, Bella scrolling through her phone, apparently uninterested in the crisis threatening their home. Alex had felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on their shoulders, the expectation that they would fix this, that they would find a way. "The mortgage company said they'd modify the loan if we had a cosigner with steady income," Alex continued. "Someone who could guarantee the payments if my parents defaulted." "And you volunteered," Jordan said, understanding dawning in their voice. "Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." Now back to the story. "I didn't volunteer," I was asked. The distinction felt important somehow. Carmen said it was temporary, just until Dad's business recovered. She promised they'd refinance in my name off the loan as soon as possible. Have they tried to refinance? Alex's silence was answer enough. The business hadn't recovered. If anything, Miguel's financial situation had grown worse. But refinancing would require admitting the modification hadn't worked. Would mean confronting the reality that Alex was now permanently tied to their family's financial stability. I own a third of this house, Alex said quietly. Legally speaking, my name is on the deed alongside theirs. Jordan was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. Do they know that? I don't think they really understand it. Or maybe they've forgotten. Alex stood and walked to the window, looking down at the backyard where their family had finished dinner without them. They see me as the responsible one who'll always be there, always sacrifice, always understand. But you're not understanding this time, are you? Alex turned to face Jordan, seeing their own transformation reflected in their partner's eyes. No, I'm not. Good, Jordan said firmly. Because this isn't normal, Alex. Healthy families don't work this way. The words hit harder than Alex expected. They'd always known their family was different from Jordan's. The Kims had boundaries, open communication, mutual respect. But Alex had convinced themselves that the Rivera way was equally valid, just more traditional, more about sacrifice and loyalty. Maybe we should consider family therapy, Jordan suggested gently. There are people who specialize in these kinds of dynamics. You think therapy can fix this? Alex gestured toward the window. Can make them see me as a person instead of a resource? Jordan was quiet, seeming to sense that Alex was approaching a line they'd never crossed before. What are you thinking about doing? The question hung in the air between them. Alex could feel themselves standing at a crossroads, one path leading toward attempted healing and reconciliation, the other towards something darker and more final. I'm thinking about what it would mean to stop enabling them, Alex said carefully. To use the power I actually have instead of pretending I don't have it. What power? Alex met Jordan's eyes, seeing their own reflection there. Tired, hurt, but for the first time in years, calculating. I co-signed that mortgage, Jordan. My name is on the deed. If I wanted to force a sale of this house, I probably could. The words left them feeling both terrified and exhilarated. They'd never even considered using their legal position as leverage before. It had always seemed unthinkable, a betrayal of everything family was supposed to mean. But as they looked down at the patio where Bella was probably still chattering about Italian hotels, while their parents nodded indulgently, Alex wondered if maybe it was time to stop protecting a family that had never learned to protect them. Alex, Jordan said quietly, be careful. Revenge has a way of destroying the person seeking it as much as the target. Alex nodded, but their mind was already elsewhere, calculating possibilities they'd never allowed themselves to consider. The car was gone, sold to fund Bella's dreams while Alex's needs were dismissed as unimportant. But the house, their house, legally speaking, was still here. And maybe it was time their family learned what happened when you took the responsible one for granted one too many times. Do blank, underscore, blank. The law office smelled like leather and disappointment. Alex sat across from Rebecca Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, a real estate attorney whose calm demeanor suggested she'd seen every possible family nightmare involving property disputes. So you co-signed the mortgage modification 3 years ago, Rebecca said, reviewing the documents Alex had brought. And your name is on the deed as a joint tenant with rights of survivorship. What does that mean exactly? It means you own the property equally with your parents. Any one of you can force a sale if the others refuse to cooperate. Rebecca looked up from the papers. Are you sure you want to pursue this option? Family property disputes tend to be messy. Alex thought about Bella's latest Instagram post, uploaded that morning from her Rome hotel room. She was holding a designer handbag that probably cost more than Alex made in a month, her caption gushing about living my best life and thanking the universe for making her dreams possible. No mention of the car sale that had funded those dreams. I'm sure, Alex said. Rebecca nodded, making notes. The process is straightforward legally. We file a partition lawsuit, which forces the sale of the property and division of proceeds among the owners. Given that you're a one-third owner, you'd receive approximately one-third of the net proceeds after the mortgage is satisfied. How long would it take? 4 to 6 months, assuming your parents don't contest it. Though I should warn you, they almost certainly will contest it. No one expects family members to use nuclear options. Nuclear option. The phrase felt appropriate. Alex was contemplating the complete destruction of their family's stability, just as their family had casually destroyed Alex's security. There's no coming back from this, Rebecca continued. Even if you change your mind later, the damage to family relationships will be permanent. Are you prepared for that? Alex's phone buzzed with another notification from Bella's Instagram, this time a video of her ordering room service in fluent Italian, the kind of expensive education their parents had somehow afforded for her language classes while Alex had worked through college. Yes, Alex said. File the paperwork. That evening, Alex sat in their apartment, staring at the legal documents Rebecca had prepared. The petition for partition looked innocuous enough: clean white paper, formal legal language, the mundane bureaucracy of family destruction. All it needed was Alex's signature and filing fee. Jordan emerged from the kitchen, setting down a cup of tea Alex hadn't requested. "You're really doing this?" It wasn't a question. Jordan had been watching Alex's transformation over the past week, the gradual shift from hurt victim to calculating strategist. Their relationship was developing new tensions. Jordan's discomfort with Alex's growing coldness, Alex's frustration with what they saw as Jordan's naivete about toxic family dynamics. "They made their choice when they sold my car," Alex said. "I'm making mine." "Alex, once you sign those papers." "I know what happens when I sign them." Alex's voice carried an edge they'd never used with Jordan before. "My parents become homeless. Bella has to cut short her vacation. The family that spent years treating me like an ATM machine suddenly has to face real consequences." Jordan sat down carefully, as if approaching a wounded animal. "Is that what you want? For them to be homeless? I want them to understand what it feels like to have your security ripped away without warning." Alex picked up the pen, rolling it between their fingers. "I want them to know what it's like when someone you trust makes decisions about your life without asking." "And you think this will make you feel better?" Alex paused, considering the question honestly. Would destroying their family's stability heal the years of being overlooked, undervalued, exploited? Would watching their parents scramble for housing provide the satisfaction they were seeking? "I think it will make me feel like I finally have some control," Alex said finally. Jordan was quiet for a long moment. "What about us? What does this do to us?" The question hung in the air between them. Alex looked at Jordan, patient, loving Jordan who tried so hard to understand a family dynamic that defied comprehension. Jordan who believed in communication and healing and the possibility of redemption. "I don't know," Alex admitted, "but I can't keep being the person who absorbs all the damage to keep everyone else comfortable. I'm not asking you to absorb damage. I'm asking you to find a way forward that doesn't require becoming someone you'll hate." Alex stared at the papers again, then at their phone where Bella's vacation updates continued to arrive with cheerful regularity. Each photo felt like another slap. The casual luxury purchased with Alex's sacrifice, the complete absence of gratitude or acknowledgement. "I already hate who I've been," Alex said quietly. "The doormat who smiled and sacrificed and enabled, while everyone else lived their best life on my dime. So become someone different, but not someone cruel." Alex met Jordan's eyes, seeing the love there but also the judgment. Jordan would never understand what it felt like to be systematically exploited by the people who were supposed to protect you. Jordan's family had boundaries, respect, mutual consideration. "They were cruel first," Alex said, picking up the pen with decision. "I'm just evening the score." The signature took 3 seconds. Alex Rivera, written in the careful script they'd learned in childhood. The name that was already on the mortgage documents that would now be used to destroy their parents' sense of security. Jordan stood up slowly. I need some air. Jordan. No, Alex. I need to think about whether the person you're becoming is someone I can be with. The words hit harder than Alex had expected. They'd been so focused on their family's betrayal that they hadn't fully considered how their quest for revenge might destroy other relationships too. But as Jordan left the apartment and Alex sat alone with the signed papers, they realized they'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. Tomorrow, they would file the petition. In 4 to 6 months, their childhood home would be sold. Their parents would have to find somewhere else to live. Bella would have to face consequences for the first time in her life, and Alex would finally know what it felt like to have power in the Rivera family dynamic. The only question now was whether that power would bring the peace they were seeking or whether it would simply create a different kind of prison, one built from the rubble of relationships they destroyed in their quest for justice. Alex looked at their phone one more time, where Bella's latest post showed her toasting the sunset over the Mediterranean. Living my best life thanks to family who believes in my dreams, the caption read. Not for much longer, Alex thought, and sealed the envelope containing their family's destruction. The for sale sign went up on a Tuesday morning. Alex drove past the house on their way to work, slowing just enough to see the red and white placards staked into the front lawn, where Carmen's rose bushes had once bloomed. Kowalski Realty, Marcus had recommended them for their efficiency and discretion in difficult family situations. The sign looked official, final, like a period at the end of a sentence their family had been writing for 26 years. Their phones started ringing before they'd even reached the station. Alex, what have you done? Carmen's voice was raw, as if she'd been crying. There's a sign in our yard. People are calling about showings. Alex pulled into the EMT station parking lot, letting the engine idle. I told you I had legal options. This is me exercising them. Mijo, please. We can work this out. Whatever we did wrong, we can fix it. You had 3 days to work it out, Mom. 3 days since Dad told you what I was planning. What did you do with those 3 days? Carmen's silence stretched long enough that Alex wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, she whispered, We were hoping you'd change your mind. Did you call Bella? Ask her to come home early? Suggest she cut her vacation short to help deal with the family crisis her trip created? She's finally having the opportunity she's worked so hard for. She's posting pictures of 5-star restaurants while you're about to lose your house. Alex's voice remained steady, clinical. But sure, let's not interrupt her Instagram content. Alex, please, where are we supposed to go? Your father's business barely covers our basic expenses. We can't afford rent somewhere else. For a moment, Alex felt the familiar tug of responsibility, the ingrained impulse to solve their parents' problems. But underneath it was something newer and harder, the recognition that this crisis was not theirs to fix. You should have thought about that before you sold my car, Alex said, and ended the call. Inside the station, Marcus was waiting with coffee and a grim smile. Saw the sign went up. Faster than I expected. Property market's hot right now. Your parents' place is in a good neighborhood, decent-sized lot. Should sell quickly. Marcus studied Alex's face. How are you feeling? Alex considered the question. They'd expected to feel triumphant, vindicated, finally in control. Instead, they felt hollow, as if something essential had been carved out of them during the night. Empty, Alex admitted. That's normal. Cutting ties with toxic family always feels like death at first. But it gets better. Does it? Marcus's expression grew serious. You want the truth? Some days I miss them. Not the abuse, not the financial manipulation, but the idea of them. The family I thought I had before I realized what they actually were. He paused. But I've never regretted protecting myself. Alex's phone buzzed continuously. Missed calls from both parents, text messages that grew increasingly desperate. They turned the phone face down, refusing to read them. Another emergency call came in, pulling Alex into the familiar rhythm of saving lives. A cardiac arrest at a downtown office building, an overdose in the University District, a car accident where a teenager reminded Alex painfully of Bella, entitled Oblivious, assuming someone else would always clean up the mess. But even while performing CPR, even while stabilizing trauma victims, Alex's mind kept drifting to their childhood home. Strangers would be walking through Carmen's kitchen today, commenting on the appliances Alex had helped their parents afford. They'd critique the bathroom Alex had helped tile during high school summers, judge the cramped bedrooms where Alex had spent their childhood being the responsible one. By evening, Alex's voicemail was full. Miguel's broken voice. Mijo, people came to look at the house today. Strangers walking through our home, judging everything we've built. Is this really what you want? Carmen, sobbing. Mrs. Vasquez saw the realtor. The whole neighborhood knows. How am I supposed to face anyone? How am I supposed to explain that my own child is destroying our family? Even Bella, finally understanding something was wrong. Alex, Mom called me crying about some house thing. I don't understand what's happening, but whatever fight you're having, can't you just work it out? I'm trying to build my brand here, and family drama is really stressing me out. Alex deleted each message without fully listening, but fragments stuck. Shame, confusion, the desperate scramble of people who'd never faced real consequences suddenly confronting the loss of everything they'd taken for granted. Their apartment felt different when they returned home that evening. Emptier, despite being unchanged. Jordan's absence was a physical presence, reminding Alex of what their quest for justice was costing beyond their family relationships. A knock at the door interrupted their brooding. Alex opened it to find Mrs. Vasquez holding a covered dish, her weathered face showing the concerned expression she'd worn through neighborhood crises for decades. Mijo, she said, stepping inside without invitation. We need to talk. Alex accepted the dish automatically. Carmen's recipe for pozole, they realized with a stab of pain. Your mother asked me to bring this. She's not eating, hasn't left the house since the sign went up. Mrs. Vasquez settled onto Alex's couch with the authority of someone who'd earned the right to speak uncomfortable truths. She's scared, Alex. Really scared. She should be. Should she? Because from where I sit, this looks like a family that lost their way, not criminals who deserve to lose their home. Alex felt their carefully constructed justifications beginning to crack. You don't understand what they did to me. Then explain it to me. So Alex did. They told Mrs. Vasquez about the car, about years of financial exploitation, about being seen as a resource rather than a person. As they spoke, they watched the older woman's expression shift from confusion to understanding, to something approaching sadness. Mijo, she said finally, what you're describing is real. What they did was wrong. But what you're doing. She gestured toward the window, toward the neighborhood where Alex's childhood home sat with its for sale sign. This isn't justice. This is revenge. And revenge always costs more than you expect to pay. Alex stared at their hands, feeling the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. They made me feel like nothing. Like my needs didn't matter, like I was just there to solve their problems. And now you're making them feel the same way. How does that heal anything? The question hung in the air between them, unanswerable. Alex had wanted power, control, the satisfaction of finally being the one making decisions that affected other people's lives. They'd achieved all of that. So why did victory feel so much like losing everything that mattered? Alex stared at Mrs. Vasquez's question long after the older woman had left, her words echoing in the silence of their apartment. How does that heal anything? The pozole sat untouched on the counter, cooling in its ceramic bowl, a peace offering from a mother Alex was systematically destroying. Their phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Jordan's name on the screen made Alex's chest tighten with hope, but the voice that greeted them was professional, distant. I'm calling because your mother contacted me yesterday, Jordan said without preamble. She asked if there was anything I could do to stop you from destroying the family. Alex sat up in bed, instantly alert. She what? She's desperate, Alex. She called me crying, begging me to talk sense into you. Said she didn't know who else to turn to. The thought of Carmen reaching out to Jordan, crossing that boundary, involving Alex's partner in their family's crisis, felt like another violation. But underneath the anger was something else. The recognition that their mother was drowning, grasping for anything that might save her. What did you tell her? That I couldn't control your decisions. But Alex... Jordan's voice softened slightly. She sounded terrified, like someone who genuinely doesn't understand how things got this bad. They got this bad because she and Dad treated me like an ATM for 26 years. I know. And I'm not saying what they did was right. But making them homeless won't undo any of that. Alex walked to their window, looking out at the Minneapolis morning. Somewhere across the city, their parents were waking up in a house that would soon belong to strangers, facing a future they'd never planned for, because they'd always assumed Alex would be there to cushion their fall. I keep thinking about something you said, Jordan continued, about how you've spent your whole life absorbing damage to keep everyone else comfortable. But Alex, what you're doing now, it's not protecting yourself anymore. It's creating damage for other people. They created damage for me first. And that makes it okay? The question hung between them, simple and devastating. Alex had built their entire justification on the foundation of their family's betrayal, but Jordan was asking something more fundamental. Did being wronged give them the right to wrong others in return? I miss you, Alex said quietly, the admission pulled from somewhere deeper than their anger. I miss you too. But I can't come back to someone who's become cruel. And Alex, what you're doing to your family, it's cruel. After Jordan hung up, Alex sat in their empty apartment, surrounded by the life they'd built through responsibility and sacrifice. Everything here had been earned through their own effort, paid for with money saved from 60-hour weeks, decorated with the careful choices of someone who'd learned early that security had to be created, not assumed. Their phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How are you holding up? Want to grab lunch? Alex stared at the message, realizing that Marcus was now their primary support system. Marcus, who'd cut ties with his own family and never looked back. Was that who Alex was becoming? Someone whose closest relationship was with another person who'd chosen isolation over healing? Before they could respond, another call came in. Bella's name on the screen surprised them. Their sister rarely called, preferring texts or social media communication. Alex, what the hell is going on? Bella's voice was sharp, lacking its usual dreamy quality. I just got off the phone with Mom, and she's talking about selling the house and being homeless, and I don't understand any of it. Did she tell you about the car? What car? Alex, I'm in Rome trying to build my career, and now I'm getting these panic calls about family emergencies. Can you please just explain what's happening? For the first time since this began, Alex heard something different in Bella's voice. Not the casual entitlement they'd grown to resent, but genuine confusion and what might have been concern. They sold my car to pay for your trip, Bella. Without asking me. Without even telling me. Silence stretched across the international connection. When Bella spoke again, her voice was smaller. What? Dad sold my Honda, the one I was still making payments on, used the money to fund your vacation. I didn't know that. They said they'd been saving money, that they wanted to support my dreams. Another pause. Alex, I swear I didn't know it was your car money. Something in Bella's tone made Alex pause. Their sister sounded genuinely shocked, not defensive or dismissive as Alex had expected. Would it have mattered if you'd known? Of course it would have mattered. I'm not a monster, Alex. I wouldn't have taken your car money for a vacation. Bella's voice grew stronger. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me this was about your car? Because they didn't think it mattered. Because in this family, my needs have never mattered as much as your wants. That's not. Bella started, then stopped. Oh my God, that's exactly what happened, isn't it? They took your car, and when you got upset, they expected you to just get over it because it was for me. Alex felt something shift inside their chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but the first crack in the wall of resentment they'd built around their sister. I'm coming home, Bella said suddenly. I'm cutting the trip short and coming home today. Bella, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Because apparently my family is falling apart while I'm posting selfies at the Coliseum, and that's not okay. Her voice grew fierce. I may be the baby of the family, but I'm not actually a baby. I can handle facing consequences for my actions. After Bella hung up, Alex sat in stunned silence. In all their calculations about revenge, they'd never considered that their sister might be capable of growth, of taking responsibility, of choosing to face difficulty rather than hiding behind their parents' protection. But Bella was coming home to a family in crisis, a house being sold, parents who were scrambling to figure out where they'd live in 4 months. Even if their sister had finally developed some accountability, it might be too late to matter. The machinery of revenge, once set in motion, didn't pause for personal growth or family reconciliation. The house would sell regardless of who learned what lessons, or who finally understood the cost of their choices. Alex had wanted power, and they'd achieved it. But power, they were learning, was a terrible thing to possess when everyone you'd ever loved was being crushed beneath its weight. Detective Ray Morgan had seen his share of family property disputes, but the Rivera case troubled him in ways he couldn't quite articulate. He sat across from Carmen and Miguel in the cramped interview room at the 2nd Precinct, watching two people who looked like they'd aged a decade in the past week. "You're saying your son is forcing the sale of your house?" Detective Morgan asked, reviewing his notes. "And you believe this constitutes fraud?" Carmen dabbed at her eyes with a tissue that had seen too much use. "He can't just sell our home without our permission. That's not legal, is it?" "Actually, ma'am, if his name is on the deed as a joint owner, he has every legal right to force a partition sale." Morgan's voice was gentle but firm. "I've reviewed the mortgage documents your lawyer provided. Your son co-signed the modification 3 years ago, which made him a legal owner of the property." Miguel's weathered hands clenched into fists on the table. "He's doing this because we sold his car. Our own son is making us homeless over a car." "Tell me about the car," Morgan said, though he already knew the details from his preliminary investigation. The story tumbled out. Miguel's failing business, Bella's Italy trip, the decision to sell Alex's Honda without consulting them. As Carmen spoke, Morgan watched her face cycle through justification and shame, the expression of someone who was beginning to understand the magnitude of their mistake. "We thought he'd understand," Carmen whispered. "Alex always understands. He's the strong one, the responsible one. We never thought he'd..." "Never thought he'd what? Protect his own interests?" The question came from the doorway, where Alex stood with their lawyer, Rebecca Chen. Morgan had called them in for questioning, though he suspected it was more for his own understanding than any legal necessity. "Alex," Carmen stood quickly, hope and desperation warring on her face. "Mijo, please. Can we talk about this? Can we find another way?" Alex remained by the door, their expression carefully neutral. "There was another way, Mom. It was called not selling my car without permission." "Detective Morgan," Rebecca interjected, "my client has answered all your questions. Unless you're planning to file charges, which we both know you can't, since Mr. Rivera has broken no laws, I suggest we conclude this interview." Morgan studied Alex's face, seeing something that reminded him of his own teenage children when they'd been hurt, that careful blankness that covered deep pain. "Mr. Rivera, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" But power, they were learning, was a terrible thing to possess when everyone you'd ever loved was being crushed beneath its weight. Detective Ray Morgan had seen his share of family property disputes, but the Rivera case troubled him in ways he couldn't quite articulate. He sat across from Carmen and Miguel in the cramped interview room at the 2nd Precinct, watching two people who looked like they'd aged a decade in the past week. "You're saying your son is forcing the sale of your house?" Detective Morgan asked, reviewing his notes. "And you believe this constitutes fraud?" Carmen dabbed at her eyes with a tissue that had seen too much use. "He can't just sell our home without our permission. That's not legal, is it?" "Actually, ma'am, if his name is on the deed as a joint owner, he has every legal right to force a partition sale." Morgan's voice was gentle but firm. "I've reviewed the mortgage documents your lawyer provided. Your son co-signed the modification 3 years ago, which made him a legal owner of the property." Miguel's weathered hands clenched into fists on the table. "He's doing this because we sold his car. Our own son is making us homeless over a car." "Tell me about the car," Morgan said, though he already knew the details from his preliminary investigation. The story tumbled out. Miguel's failing business, Bella's Italy trip, the decision to sell Alex's Honda without consulting them. As Carmen spoke, Morgan watched her face cycle through justification and shame, the expression of someone who was beginning to understand the magnitude of their mistake. "We thought he'd understand," Carmen whispered. "Alex always understands. He's the strong one, the responsible one. We never thought he'd—" "Never thought he'd what? Protect his own interests?" The question came from the doorway, where Alex stood with their lawyer, Rebecca Chen. Morgan had called them in for questioning, though he suspected it was more for his own understanding than any legal necessity. "Alex," Carmen stood quickly, hope and desperation warring on her face. "Mijo, please, can we talk about this? Can we find another way?" Alex remained by the door, their expression carefully neutral. "There was another way, Mom. It was called not selling my car without permission." "Detective Morgan," Rebecca interjected, "my client has answered all your questions. Unless you're planning to file charges, which we both know you can't, since Mr. Rivera has broken no laws, I suggest we conclude this interview." Morgan studied Alex's face, seeing something that reminded him of his own teenage children when they'd been hurt. That careful blankness that covered deep pain. "Mr. Rivera, can I speak with you privately for a moment? Always been there for you." Alex stared at their sister as if seeing her for the first time. "Bella?" "No, Alex, let me finish." Bella turned back to their parents. "I'm 23 years old. I'm not a child who needs to be protected from consequences. But you've been protecting me from them my whole life, and making Alex pay the price." The room fell silent, except for Carmen's quiet sobbing. Morgan had seen many family confrontations in his career, but this felt different. Not just anger and accusation, but the painful process of people finally seeing each other clearly. "The house is still going to be sold," Alex said quietly. "Even if you understand now, even if everyone's sorry, the legal process is already in motion." "Then stop it," Bella said simply. "You started this. You can stop it." "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." Bella moved closer to Alex, her voice gentle but firm. "You wanted them to understand what they did to you. They understand now. The question is, what do you want to happen next?" Morgan watched Alex struggle with their sister's words, seeing someone who'd been so focused on punishment that they'd forgotten to consider what came after justice was served. The machinery of revenge was still grinding forward, but for the first time since this crisis began, Alex looked like they were questioning whether they really wanted to watch it crush everything in its path. Sometimes, Morgan reflected, the hardest part of justice wasn't deciding who deserved punishment. It was deciding when enough was enough. Sofia Mendez had seen desperate families before, but the Rivera case felt different as she set up her office for an emergency session. Jordan had called her at 6 a.m., voice tight with urgency, explaining that a family was imploding and time was running out to save them from complete destruction. "I've never seen Alex like this," Jordan had said. "They've become someone I don't recognize, and I'm afraid that if we don't intervene now, there won't be anything left to save." Now, at 7 p.m. on a Thursday, Sofia watched the Rivera family file into her office like survivors of a disaster. Carmen's eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. Miguel looked like he'd aged a decade in the past week. And Bella, who Jordan had described as the golden child, carried herself with a new gravity that suggested rapid, painful growth. Alex entered last, their expression carefully guarded, and Sofia immediately understood Jordan's concern. This was someone who'd armored themselves against further hurt, but the armor had become a prison. "Thank you all for coming," Sofia began, settling into her chair. "I understand you're facing a family crisis, and time is limited. The house sale is scheduled to proceed, and relationships are fracturing. But before we can address solutions, we need to understand how we got here." "Our son is trying to destroy our family," Carmen said immediately, her voice thick with pain. "Over a car. He's making us homeless over a car. Mom, stop." Bella's voice was firm. "It's not about the car, and you know it." Sofia watched the family dynamics play out, seeing years of established patterns in their positioning. Carmen and Miguel unconsciously turning toward Bella as if she were their translator. Alex sitting slightly apart, isolated even in this circle of chairs. "Alex," Sofia said gently, "can you help me understand your perspective?" Alex was quiet for a long moment, their hands clenched in their lap. They sold my car without my permission to fund Bella's vacation. When I confronted them, they acted like I was being unreasonable for being upset. It wasn't just about the car, Miguel protested. We needed the money and you barely used— Dad, please listen to yourself, Bella interrupted. You're still doing it. You're still justifying taking Alex's property without consent. Sophia noted the shift in family dynamics. Bella was no longer the protected child, but was actively challenging her parents' behavior. Meanwhile, Alex looked surprised by their sister's support, as if it didn't fit their narrative of family betrayal. Carmen, Miguel, Sophia said, help me understand your decision-making process. When you needed money for Bella's trip, why was selling Alex's car the solution you chose? Carmen's voice was defensive. Alex always understands. He's the strong one, the responsible one. We knew he'd figure it out. Did you consider asking Alex for the money instead of taking it? The question hung in the air. Carmen and Miguel exchanged glances, and Sophia could see the moment they realized they'd never even considered treating Alex as someone whose consent mattered. We thought it would be easier this way, Miguel admitted. Alex had already done so much for us. We didn't want to ask for more. So instead, you took without asking, Alex said quietly. You decided that was kinder than giving me a choice. Alex, Sophia turned to them. You co-signed the mortgage on this house. You have legal power to force its sale. Can you help me understand why that felt like the appropriate response? Alex's carefully maintained composure began to crack. Because nothing else worked. 26 years of being the reliable one, the one who sacrifices, the one who understands, and they still saw me as a resource instead of a person. So you decided to show them you had power. I decided to stop enabling their dysfunction by destroying their security the way they destroyed yours. Alex fell silent, the parallel laid bare. Sophia watched them grapple with the implications, seeing someone who'd been so focused on justice that they'd lost sight of the person it was turning them into. Bella, Sophia said, you've been listening to your family describe years of dynamics you were part of. What's your perspective? Bella looked around the circle, her expression pained. I'm realizing that my whole life, Mom and Dad protected me from consequences while making Alex pay for everything. I thought that was just how families worked, that Alex was naturally more responsible, more capable. She paused. The family therapy sessions with Sophia had continued every week, each one peeling back layers of dysfunction that had accumulated over decades. Some sessions ended with breakthroughs, others with tears, and a few with Alex walking out when the work felt too overwhelming. But they always came back. And Bella, Alex smiled, expression that had become more frequent recently. Their sister had surprised everyone with her commitment to changing the family dynamics. She'd taken a job as a marketing coordinator at a local nonprofit, moved into her own apartment, and started contributing financially to household expenses. More importantly, she'd begun treating Alex as a sibling rather than a safety net. She's coming to dinner tonight. She wants to show Dad some budgeting spreadsheets she made. Alex paused in their tamale assembly. She's actually good at financial stuff. Who knew? The front door chimed, and Bella appeared in the kitchen, carrying grocery bags and wearing the professional clothes that still looked strange on someone Alex remembered as perpetually in pajamas. Mrs. V, Bella greeted their neighbor warmly. Are you teaching Alex your secret tamale techniques? Because honestly, Alex needs all the help they can get in the kitchen. Hey, Alex protested, but their tone held affection rather than irritation. This teasing felt different from the casual dismissal they'd endured for years. It was the teasing of someone who saw Alex as an equal, not a resource. How's work? Alex asked, as Bella began unpacking groceries. Good. Exhausting, but good. I'm learning that having to earn money makes you think differently about spending it. Bella paused, her expression growing serious. I've been meaning to ask, are you okay with me taking over more of Mom and Dad's financial planning? I know that was always your thing. The question would have triggered resentment 6 months ago, another way for Bella to take over something Alex had built. But now Alex recognized it for what it was. Bella offering to shoulder responsibility instead of expecting Alex to carry it alone. I'd appreciate that, Alex said honestly, as long as you promise to ask for help if you need it, instead of making decisions that affect other people without talking to them first. I promise. And Alex? Bella met their eyes. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand what you were carrying. I'm sorry I was so selfish. Mrs. Vasquez smiled as she watched the siblings interact, seeing the careful respect they were building to.